Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Stephanie Michele Sweigart, and I'm a licensed and practicing school-based SLP out here in Los Angeles, California. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here today with SpeechTherapyPD.com. We are excited to have you back in yet another episode for the month of May, where we've been talking about Better Hearing and Speech Month. And just as a reminder, ASHA tells us that each Better Hearing and Speech Month really gives us that opportunity to raise the awareness about communication disorders and all of the different ASHA members and their roles in providing life-altering treatment. The theme for 2023 is building a strong foundation. So we thought this would actually be a perfect time to bring in our guest that we have here today. This is Cara Smithwick. Super excited to have you here, Cara. Thank you so much for being a part of one of our episodes.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. For all the listeners who are here, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're involved in, what your passions are, maybe a current project that you're in.
My name is Cara Smithwick. As you said, I'm the current executive director of Beginnings in South Carolina. We were founded 11 years ago. We brought a model down from North Carolina, which has been around for 30 years, and it had been adapting it for South Carolina. But before that, I was a teacher of the deaf for almost 20 years and finally resigned from my school district because I realized that I could better teach children by teaching their parents. Really, I was a great teacher, and I felt like that was my mission for a really long time. And it wasn't until I began talking with colleagues and found the research that said parents don't know what they don't know, and the parents that do know can't find the resources. And I just got cold, but hairs on my arm stood up. And so it was then that we decided to bring a parent education model to South Carolina so that we can build up the capabilities and empower these parents to advocate for their own children.
I love that. So you had a calling and you went for it. And this is awesome because you're educating parents. So it's sort of like that idea when we provide education to teachers or program specialists, it's a top-down, right? It's a top-down approach in how we're sharing our information. So let me tell you, I know that you have a course on SpeechTherapyPD.com called Help Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children in Speech Therapy. Cara, I took this course. I love this course. I can tell you were a teacher for 20 years.
Yeah.
You did. And you got awesome feedback of everybody that was in the course while you were there. And I completely agree with everybody. This was a 1.5 hour course on SpeechTherapyPD.com. But you are such a good teacher. You take these concepts and you really simplify them in a way that I was able to, it was so engaging. I was able to, even with my ADHD, I was able to stay focused and listen. And because it was interactive, you had us taking quizzes and listening to sound samples, and you were putting up really nice visuals and diagrams and charts to kind of explain what you were teaching. So you have the verbal modality, the visual modality, like all of it. It was so wonderful. You have a really enriching handout. It's like close to 30 some pages. That is an awesome reference. Thank you so much for all of that. So that's why this was the perfect time to bring you on to talk about that course. And I think a lot of our listeners, our speech clinicians out there, and maybe parents and others as well, have these questions that they're asking. And I think our golden question that we really have for you today is, what would be maybe 3 takeaways that speech clinicians should know when we're working with children who are deaf and hard of hearing?
Well, thank you for all those kind thoughts about the website, about the course that was designed with my ADHD in mind. So benefited too. I have like 3 soapboxes that I have that I like to jump back and forth and preach from. The first one is deaf and hard of hearing children aren't disabled until they don't have access to language. They are not born disabled. When they are older and lose their hearing, they're not disabled until they don't have access to language. It's that part that creates the disability, and then the compounding effects of hearing loss. And so looking at hearing loss from a learning disabled perspective doesn't really do it justice because it's an access to language. The second one is to make sure that speech pathologists get an accurate audiogram of the children that they're working with that have hearing loss, because as we said in that course, it depends on where the hearing levels are aided. depends on what speech sounds they can hear. And so we used to call it an aided audiogram, because they would able to actually go into the booth and with their hearing aids and see how much gain they got. But now they do real ear measures. And so you can just ask, how much do the hearing aids help? And get that audiogram. And then you can plot it on one of the audiograms that I shared during the course. So you can see which sounds the child can actually hear and perceive with their hearing aids.
Yes, and may I stop you there for a second, because I'm having the visual memory right now. One of the pictures that you showed us was so helpful. It actually showed the different decibels and which sounds come at those decibels, so that way you can look at the child's hearing level, which is another point I want to bring up in a second. But then it's like, okay, this is very clear to me. If this is the hearing level, these sounds are not included in that. That's such a perfect, it's like something I want to just print off and staple on the back wall behind my desk to quick reference. I loved that.
And I even included in that course is I created that audiogram with all the sounds on it and the pictures, because I took several audiogram with pictures and sounds on it and put them all in one, so that it's the most comprehensive one that I've seen, just because I did it. Yeah, so
love that.
Yes. And then if you're doing, this is the biggest one for speech pathologists, if you're doing speech with a child, make sure they've had their hearing screened. That seems like a no-brainer, but it's not. Have their hearing screened. If they're younger than 4, you're going to need to get an otoacoustic emissions screener, an OAE, get a reading from that. Older than 4, 5, if they don't have some complicating factors, you can get them screened at school, but get their hearing screened. Because if you're one student, I think I talked about this in the course, one student had her hearing screened in 5th grade, and she knew she was not making progress on her speech goals. And when they screened her, they found out that she had progressive hearing loss in both of her ears. And so she finally, when she got her hearing aids, I said, how are you feeling? What's this going to help you with school? And she said, I'm finally going to master my speech goals.
Oh, I love that.
So she was trying so hard to master these goals, and she couldn't attain them because she couldn't hear the sounds. But now she can, and now she's making progress. I am happy to report. So get a hearing screening on the kids you do speech.
So with that being said, how often would you recommend rescreening? Do we rescreen each year before every assessment? If there was one done before we have a student that comes on our caseload, do we rescreen? What is the frequency of screening would you recommend?
The Academy of Pediatrics has a frequency schedule. So I think that's like, and it's assessment of risk factors, and then maybe using the audiogram, but it's kindergarten, 1st grade, you know, I would get a good reading on them when they came into the program. And then if you noticed some speech sounds changing, then you can rescreen them. But, you know, if you just wanted to get one good screening through that, because it is, there's some kids who are born with hearing loss, but the overwhelming majority of kids develop hearing loss after they're born. And so there are going to be kids, but then you might notice their speech sounds or their vocabulary not progressing, and then hopefully that would cue you to go and do another hearing screen.
Okay, good information. Now, you brought up something really interesting. So in your first point, you said children aren't born with a disability. So what I'm hearing you say is it's the environment, right? Making sure that they have access to what they're needing. And this reminded me of a key point that was new. I actually learned this I loved this because I love how we need to constantly evolve our own language, our own vocabulary as the culture evolves. And you brought up the movement of coming out of talking about hearing loss and looking at calling it hearing levels, because children aren't actually born with a missing something, right? Could you clarify that a little bit more for some of our listeners? Because I thought that was a great
job. But yeah, it's so you know, kids who were born with different hearing levels haven't lost anything, and so hearing lost, it's kind of like I had hearing and I lost it. And so you know, I've even said hearing loss multiple times during this then in this interview, only because that's what most people are used to hearing. And so sometimes for the general public, I still say hearing loss, because hearing levels takes an extra step to explain, but really that's what it is. It's hearing levels. We don't lose our vision when we need glasses. We're just farsighted or nearsighted, and then we talk about how much. And so it's just talking about the different levels of hearing. So it might be a mild hearing level or a moderate hearing level, and it makes it more normalizing.
Okay, I love that. That was definitely something that stuck out to me. So thank you so much for all of this. I'm curious, Cara, if people want to learn more about you and your resources, all these great handouts that you have and the information that you're sharing, where can they find you?
We Beginnings is located online, and so that would be as beginnings with an S and then an SC.org. So we are online. We're on Facebook. We're on Pinterest.
Oh, perfect.
Instagram.
So, Instagram. Great. Okay. So what we'll do is, for everybody that's listening, we are going to post the links, Cara, that you're talking about below this episode, so everybody can just sort of click and go and be connected with you and those resources. As we are closing out today, do you have any suggestions that you could share with our listeners on maybe just some creative or fun ways to celebrate the Better Hearing and Speech Month?
I don't necessarily have any creative ways. But there's also a new one for late onset hearing loss awareness, which is March 4th through March 10th, which is right in the middle of Better Speech and Hearing, because so many kids are identified late. Okay. That could be another level on the Better Speech and Hearing, is really focusing on the children who do develop hearing loss. And that's 1 in 100 kids that are out there with hearing loss. Okay,
so let me clarify. Did you say March, or this would be May?
I said March, didn't I?
That's okay. I caught it, but I want to clarify if I heard it correctly. I think I knew what you meant, but I was like, I'm going to clarify that just because maybe this is a time that's also celebrated in March. I don't know.
No, it's just an M month. It's a May 4th through the 10th is late onset hearing loss, and that was started by one of the Osmond brothers. Johnny Osmond, one of the Justin Osmond has a hearing loss, and so does his daughter. And so he and a parent have created that late onset hearing loss awareness month.
Okay, so, I love that. That's a new tidbit of information that I was not aware of. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, we are going to close out, but to take a deeper dive into this topic and further your education, please check out Help, Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children and Speech Therapy. And this is on speechtherapypd.com with presenter Cara Smithwick. Thank you so much, Cara.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, for having me.
Absolutely. And for other topics, everybody, if you subscribe to speechtherapypd.com, you're going to get 1 year access to over 900 live and on-demand courses where you're going to scoop up those ASHA CEUs, and they're going to report your CEUs to ASHA for you as well. If you're new or you want to just check out speechtherapypd.com and what they're all about, you can access a free course. So be sure to see the information below this episode to do so. If you found this video helpful, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe. We have new videos coming out for you each week where we are bringing in industry-leading experts to give you the answers you need to build your skill set so you can move forward confidently in your journey. We want to hear from you. Feel free to ask questions below or place a comment in the comment sections. We will see you back here next week. Thank you, everybody, and happy May.